Hey guys, and I'm back to talking about the Shadowhunter series. I'm sorry for taking a bit of a break, but life happens. And today I'm gonna be talking about the tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, the Whitechapel Fiend, which is the seventh book if we're going by our magical chronological order, which you can see over here, or the third book in the Shadowhunter Academy series. Now, I do have to say I messed up the order a bit. It would have been better to put this in 2008, somewhere over here, rather than right after Clockwork Princess. The thing is, when I was researching the order of these books and the timeline, it said that the Whitechapel Find takes place both in 1888 and in 2008. And because I obviously haven't read the book yet, I first made the timeline and then read them in chronological order, I decided to stick it over here. And now, after reading it, I realized that this was a bit of a mistake. A lot of new characters were introduced, such as Simon and George and Jace, and they felt very disjointed because the context for them comes from those other novels that I haven't read yet. And there are also a lot of references to the events that happened in those other novels, which just went over my head because I haven't read it in the correct order. Not to mention that this way, this novel will also spoil some of the plot points of those other novels. But again, this is my fault, this is not the book's fault. I do want to say, though, that if you plan on reading these books in chronological order, in the same way that I have done it, it would be better for you to read this book over here rather than in the order that I have read these books in. So the book takes place in the Shadowhunter Academy, which is this magical school in Idris. And Idris is this magical country that only Shadowhunters live in. And also apparently mundanes or humans who want to become Shadowhunters. The whole thing starts with George and Simon just lying in their dorm rooms talking about slime on the wall. And this beginning is pretty underwhelming, for lack of a better word, in comparison with the Infernal Devices series, where Clockwork Angel started with Jem and Will investigating a murder, Clockwork Prince, which started with Will in the graveyard talking to ghosts, and Clockwork Princess started with Adele mysteriously dying and screaming from receiving her marks. In comparison with all that, this beginning of the book it kinda sucks. The Shadowhunter Academy itself also sounds like a place that sucks. There is no Wi-Fi, the training sounds like hell, the instructors are mean, the academy is described as being minimalistic, too minimalistic. The whole thing is just basically described as this huge ruin, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Because you see, the Shadowhunters are pretty darn wealthy, which means that their children are supposed to be the rich kids, and the people who primarily study in this academy are the Shadowhunters. So you have rich parents who send their children to study in a place that is this horrible. Yeah, that surely makes a ton of sense. I mean, just for reference, these are the type of schools where rich parents usually send their kids to. Does this look close to something that is described as the Shadowhunter Academy? No, it does not. And apart from it not making that much sense, it also destroys the whole magic of the magical school. Because you see, the magical schools are supposed to be, wait for it, magical. And without the aesthetics, well, it's not really as magical anymore, is it? Like, the elements that make the magical school fun just aren't there here. When it comes to the whole storyline of what happened in 2008, it's just a bit of a mess. It's really hard for me to pinpoint what the conflict is, or what the plot is, really. Is it Simon overcoming himself with a tree exercise, Well, not really, because Simon doesn't really feel proud of himself for doing it. He just feels like his normal upset self. So there isn't really like any character growth or significance from that perspective. Is it Simon versus the Shadowhunter Academy? Well, in that case, Simon isn't really doing much to escape. Neither is his opinion changing that much over the place. So, not that either. Is it Simon versus his relationship with Jace, George, and all of those guys? Also, not really, because there isn't much of a conflict I can dissect or pinpoint there. So, that whole part is like things just sort of happen and events happen, but I don't really understand what the stakes are because I don't really understand where the conflict lies. Then there's also a small storyline with Jace trying to figure out what his heritage is. And so Jace goes and talks to Tessa to try to find things from Tessa about his heritage. And he finds absolutely nothing interesting. Nothing. So, what was the point of that whole plot line again? Now, when it comes to the 1888 plot line, there is a central conflict and a coherent plot there. So, it only took us 34 pages out of 73 to get there. Pretty much more than 1/3 of the book. So, the plot line of 1888, it takes place in London, and we have our familiar characters of Tessa, Will, and Jem, who's now a silent brother, and that whole gang basically. They are investigating the murder, and the whole thing was supposed to be a mystery, one of those mystery stories. And it also has this traditional Shadowhunter formula of our Shadowhunters being the police of the supernatural world and investigating some supernatural threat. In this case, the murders. So, based on the locations of the murders and how long it would take for the murderer to get from one place to another, and based on how the murders were done, they decided that those murders were performed by demons. And so, because demons are part of the supernatural world, they decided to get involved. Tessa and Cicely would patrol the streets and they would disguise themselves as prostitutes. I really like how Cassandra described the lives of prostitutes as being miserable and poverty-ridden and dirty. I mean, she kept it real, man. I would have really hated for her to have glamorized that whole situation, so I'm happy that she kept it really close to how it would have been like back then for the street prostitutes to exist. And during those patrols, Tessa and Cicely found nothing interesting. Absolutely nothing. So, what was the point of the patrols again? Well, nothing. And then after that, they also investigated one of the crime scenes, and Tessa showed up at one of the murders after it happened, and she just sort of investigated it. And once again, they did not find any important clues. So the whole thing just doesn't feel that much of a mystery, since there are no clues or theories that I could create about it. And the whole thing that makes mysteries fun is that there are different theories that you can come up with, there are different clues that you can think about, but in this story, none of that existed. Nothing. When Tessa comes home, they find that the house is being attacked by that demon, and Jem, who is now Brother Zachariah, he immediately recognizes that demon and what that type of demon it is, which makes zero sense because based on what evidence? Tessa, nor Will, nor anybody else from the gang had collected any evidence onto what the demon is. So how does Jem magically know what the demon is? That just makes no sense. So yeah, definitely not my favorite book. I would give it an overall ranking of 2.5 out of 5 stars. The writing style is better than in the first 3 books of the Bane Chronicles, but that is not saying much. Thanks guys for listening. Hope you guys will tune in next time, and I love you all. Goodbye.